Welcome to the Live Explore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sean Payne, and this is the Housing Signal podcast brought to you by Live Explore.
I'm Isaiah Chass, and today we're going to dig into the probate and trust sale process.
Yep, we're going to talk about choosing the right real estate agent and what qualities to look for that way. So let's jump right into it. So our previous podcast on probates, we talked about my experience, and I'm going to hound on that again right from the beginning. That probate and trust sales are a little bit different, and so I really think it's important to have an agent with specific experience in dealing with probate and trust sales. Because there's a variety of things that can come up in those sales that you had prepared for. So
yeah, a lot of nuances, especially things that can extend the process being much longer than traditional sale, where a lot of people might not be under the impression that it will take longer.
Right. Yeah, it can blow up. So yeah, that, and then also, again, because the administrator or trustees' knowledge of a property can be very limited, you're going into it really not knowing a lot about a property. So, this is where that experience comes into play, where you have to be a little bit of a Sherlock Holmes and trying to figure out like what's going on with the property. And by that I mean that may make some agents cringe, but when you're going through the preliminary title report, I think you need to go through it like with a little bit closer eye, like really look at the easements. You're trying to gather as much information as possible because you don't have an owner that's going to give you the intimate knowledge, and you really don't want to get caught off guard through the buyer's due diligence. That way, I mean, obviously they often and very well should extend their due diligence and go be very thorough that way. But, usually that's the condition of the home, things of that nature. You never want to be caught off guard with a certain easement you didn't know about, especially if it was just right on the prelim right there.
Right.
Something of that nature. So I do think really, going through the natural hazard report and then just doing like a really deep dive into the property's tax history. Again, I know this is going to make some people cringe, especially attorneys, but I just don't know how you can approach these sales without looking at the permit history and things of that nature of the home to gather some idea of what was going on that way, especially if you're kind of looking for like a health and safety issue of the property, or like often these properties have a lot of deferred maintenance. So you're trying to figure out what's going on here. If it's a country property, does it have a septic? Things of that nature. What's the well like? How deep's the well? So if you're trying to find any information like that before you go to market, because let's say let's say you don't have like a viable water source, you have a well, but it's a shallow well and goes dry in the summer, that's going to affect the value. And ideally, those are the type of things that you try to figure out beforehand that way to head things off. So.
Right. And almost always, if a buyer does, almost always a buyer will do their investigation. And if there are no reports or inspections done and on file, a lot of times something will come up, and it's better to head that off from the bat and let them know the condition of it rather than them coming down. I know some agents will probably see a property with no reports and say, oh, great. Now I can tell my client that we're going to come in and have a report and be able to negotiate further. That's really probably one of the best case scenarios. The worst case scenario is that they're going to cancel, and then you're back on the market dealing with it again. So it is important to have specialized reports, and that includes a home inspection. It could include a structural pest report, as you mentioned, wells. So that's a well report or a septic inspection, and that covers the full situation of the property to a reasonable level that a buyer can rely on.
Right.
Obviously, they should and are encouraged to do their further inspections, but it gives them a good idea from the start. And then also wildfire. We live in an area that there is further regulation in place for wildfire disclosures, but I mean, you could talk about how these reports are changing and being added I mean, even recently, there's been a new provision
Right.
for the natural hazard disclosure.
Yeah, this is a moving target, right? There is a new wildfire report that the California Association of Realtors thinks should be standard. Oh, excuse me. There are third-party companies like Madronas that we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago that does a little bit more in-depth report. So the industry's trying to figure things out. But yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. It's something really important to look through. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and on top of that, just purely an agent visual inspection, just prior to even showing, to make sure that there's anything on the property that could injure someone walking around. That will be a whole nother headache if someone walks onto a deck and then the deck fails.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think all those kind of go together. I've heard some, horror stories of, I can't remember. Years ago, an agent walked out to a property, and I think there was an old hand-dug well, and they fell into it and broke their leg. So those type of things, you want to make sure that you want to walk the property thoroughly, make sure there's nothing like that going on. If there's a board in the backyard over something, lift it up and see what's going on under there. So yes, you want to do a thorough inspection. Along with the report, you want to make sure that handrails are safe and things of that nature, because no one's going to tell you, hey, that's loose, and then all of a sudden someone goes out there and grabs it and falls over that way. That can affect the estate, and someone come back and can sue the estate, and no one wants that. So that's why I think it's very important to just go through everything and make sure, just take your time and do a little bit more due diligence that way. Especially when you're walking the property, the same thing. If you see often there's a lot of deferred maintenance. There's trees overhanging on a property. You may, again, want to look at, go back into the wildfires. You may want to say, hey, look, we need to trim these back. There potentially could be insurability issues, and that's going to affect the potential to sell the property. So those are the things that you just have to kind of address up front, because they're going to come back and bite you at some point. It's just better to do it before he goes into contract that way.
Right.
So.
And a lot of times it can be hard to, say there's a tree branch that needs to get trimmed or further maintenance. Sometimes it might not be in the estate's best interest to put a lot of money into the property to fix it up or do repairs, but sometimes it needs to be done. Our probate and trust division is able to help cover those costs, help with the funding to get that process rolling.
Yes, we have a couple programs that can help the estate cover those costs, and then they get reimbursed at close of escrow. And again, that's something that as real estate professionals, that's where it's good to have someone experienced, especially in this market, this crazy market. Because you want to be able to look at things and say, hey, we should have this done up front. Oops, this is not going to allow the property to be financed. We're really close to be able to, maybe there's one issue that's just kind of the eyesore that's not going to allow the property to be financed. Let's head that off to open it up to a bigger pool of buyers, which will drive up your price. So yes, those are the type of things that you want to look at that way.
And on the flip side, sometimes it takes someone experienced to make that decision of not over improving. It's so easy to start with, okay, let's do carpet, and then but where does it stop? At some point, it takes experience with this to understand, okay, maybe it's not worth doing any of this.
Right.
Just safety issues. Maybe it's a broken window, just replacing the window so that it's able to be financed, but not going overkill with improvements that really aren't going to have a significant rate of return.
Yeah, exactly. So often, you said it really well. Yeah, so often it's hard to define that line, but often these are properties that have deferred maintenance or might be a little bit outdated that way. And so where do you start and where do you stop? And yeah, that's just a conversation you have to figure out. And often, just making the property, often these properties are going to be remodeled anyway, or highly updated, either by an investor or whoever buys the property. So it's just not, you're just not going to get the rate of return that way. And so, and talking on that note, talking about communication, that's just something as the agent that you have to communicate that with all parties. And by that, I mean, the listing side that you're representing, you have to let everyone know what's going on that way. And you have to have there often can be many beneficiaries. So, sometimes there can be 10, 12. I think one time I had 17 beneficiaries. And so, you have to be able to communicate with everyone what exactly is going on that way. So on that side, as well as understanding the process and whether it is a probate or trust, the timelines can be very different. We talked about in the last podcast how the heirs or trustees are noticed, and so often again I've seen it done many ways, but most of the attorneys that I've worked with want to wait until all contingencies have been removed, and that's when the heirs or beneficiaries are noticed, and that's usually, I don't know what the legal time frame is. I know it varies between in-state and out-of-state, but let's say it's like 18, 20 days. So again, you want to let everyone know, hey, this is what's going on. And a conversation often is, wait, you haven't noticed them yet? No, we're not going to notice them until after contingencies have been removed. That's not always the case. I have been, certain cases, attorneys are like, no, we're going to notice them right now, that's where you rely on your attorney and not like your realtor for that type of advice that way.
Right.
So, but it's very important to communicate that way. That's why we've developed an advisory form here to spell out those dates and kind of explain the process as much as possible. So when the other side goes, wait, what do you mean? It's like, but here's the form that you signed. You didn't read this right here. So just like an extra layer to hopefully keep everyone on the same page. So, and I would say here's probably the most important part is that this field's changing, but it used to be very hard. It used to be like, I would say it was a lot of attorneys that didn't like technology. So when you're working in the estate and planning, it was just like it was a slower process that way. And it was harder to communicate with estate planning attorneys. Now, I think the world's sped up and everyone's expected to communicate quicker and use email in that way. And that's where I think this process has gotten better, because I think through email and just the estate planning side, be willing to use email and modern communications makes things easier. So
right. And you mentioned that there can be a lot of beneficiaries involved, and if there's 15 different or 10 different, even 5 different beneficiaries, everyone might have different expectations as well. So it's so important making sure that everyone is all on the same page from the start throughout the process.
Yes, everyone will have different expectations, fortunately, unfortunately, through the entire process. Like if you have beneficiaries that are local to the sale, I've always found that if you're out of state, well, this real estate must be worth $5 million because everything in California is gold, right? Like so,
totally.
So if you're selling like a property that needs work, and they're like, wait a second, we've heard that all real estate, and you're like, well, not everything. So those are the expectations that you get, and every market's kind of function a little bit differently that way. So, but yes, it's really important to keep everyone on the same page.
Absolutely.
So, yep.
Well, if anyone has any questions, please do reach out. This is a complex field. Takes someone that definitely has experience and knowledge within it.
Yes. And if you have any other questions, I would go check out protrustsales.com. That is our website for our probate and trust division. Whether it's, a commercial sale, residential sale, land sale, we have experience in those fields that way. So, and there's a lot of really good information there, a lot of great blogs and just about the process. So
absolutely.
Great. Well, if you like this content, please hit like and subscribe for more content in the future.
See you guys next time.
Welcome to the Live Explore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.